Hello my friends and welcome to this new part on natural language processing. I'm super excited to start this part because this is the branch of machine learning with which you can build chatbots and machine translations. So of course this is not what we're going to do in this part because this is really advanced NLP. So we'll just cover the basics with sentiment analysis, which consists of training a machine to understand some text and predict a certain outcome for these texts. So in our case study here, these texts will be reviews of a restaurant and we'll have to train a machine to understand if each review is positive or negative. So very simple, very classic, but the best way to be introduced to NLP. All right, so before we start, let's make sure everyone here is on the same page. This is the folder containing all the codes and data sets, and of which I give you the link right before this tutorial in the article. So make sure to connect to that link. And now there we go, we can enter part 7, natural language processing. So in this part you will only find one section. That's because we only do one case study of NLP about sentiment analysis. However, you will see that you can try diverse machine learning models to tackle the problem. Indeed, the essential part of our implementation will be to build the bag of words model, but then once it is built, we can try several classification models. Why classification models? That's because we'll have to predict, a binary outcome, 1 or 0. 1 meaning the review is positive and 0 meaning the review is negative. So you'll have actually the flexibility to try several machine learning models, and this will actually be your final exercise of this section. So there we go, let's do this. Let's enter section 36 now, natural language processing. And as usual, we're going to start with Python, in which you will find two files: the implementation, natural language processing.ipynb, which you can open with either Google Colaboratory or Jupyter Notebook, and our dataset, restaurant reviews. This time not CSV, but TSV. And this will be a good opportunity for me to train you on how to import a TSV dataset. TSV means tab separated value instead of comma separated value like in a CSV. So basically the only difference is that in the previous data sets we worked with, the features and the dependent variable were separated by commas. And in this one, instead of being separated by commas, the reviews and the dependent variable will be separated by a tab. And this makes sense, right? Because in the reviews, we already have commas, and therefore that would create nonsense features. But let me show you what this dataset looks like. So as you can see, there are only two columns. The first one containing all the reviews. So for example, this is the first one, wow, love this place. A second one, crust is not good. Another one, a great touch, etc. So you have in total, let's see, 1,000 reviews, right? So we're going to train our machine learning to actually understand text and predict if the texts are positive or negative with 1,000 texts. All right. And then the second column is, of course, if the review is positive or negative. So 1 means that it is positive, meaning the customer liked it, and 0 means that the review is negative. And of course, we have the real outcomes in order to train our machine learning model to understand if each of these texts is positive or negative. So that's purely, in the end, a classification problem, but the essential part of it is that we'll train the machine to understand these texts first and then to predict if they are positive or negative. All right, so very simple case study, very simple data set. That means we're ready to start the implementation of natural language processing. So, as you prefer, feel free to open it with either Google Colaboratory or Jupyter Notebook. I'm opening it with Google Colab as usual, so feel free to do the same if you'd like. And now the notebook is loading. In a second, it will be laying out. All right, loading, laying out, perfect. And this is the implementation. And as usual, this is in read-only mode, and we want to re-implement this from scratch. Therefore, we're going to create a copy right away so that we can modify the code inside. So we're going to click Save a Copy in Drive here. This will create a copy, after which we will be able to modify the code and re-implement this from scratch. And speaking of re-implementing it from scratch, let's delete all the code cells because we will re-implement them. So let's click this trash button here in each of the code cells, but not the text, so that we can keep the well-highlighted structure and see where we're going at each time of the implementation. All right, so almost done. It's actually an implementation in about 10 steps, but you will recognize some of the steps as steps we did before. You'll see, I'm going to show you in a second. All right, so let's have a look at the structure of this implementation. We will start first by importing the libraries, as usual, because indeed we will need several libraries to pre-process our text and train our future machine learning model. Then we will import the dataset, so that's actually the data preprocessing phase, but not only that, the data preprocessing phase will also contain the next two cells, cleaning the text. Indeed, we will have to simplify the text as much as we can in order to ease the learning process of the machine learning model. We'll have to remove all the punctuations, we'll have to put all the letters in lowercase, then we'll have to apply stemming. We'll have to make very clean text to alleviate the learning process of the future classification model we'll build. So that's a compulsory process when doing NLP. You have to pre-process the text, basically. Then we'll create the bag of words model, which is at the heart of sentiment analysis. And then, there you go, that's where you will recognize everything. Once we have the bag of words model, we basically have a dataset ready to be trained, right? We have a dataset ready to be trained by a machine learning model, and that's why then we will just apply the classic process of training a model. First, we will split the dataset into the training set and test set so that we can indeed have a set where we train the model to understand text and predict if the texts are positive or negative, and the test set so that we can evaluate the performance on new text on which the model wasn't trained. And then, there we go, we train. So I chose a naive Bayes model on the training set, but you will see that your final exercise at the end will be to try the other classification models and see if you can beat the accuracy I will get in this implementation. Then we will predict the test set results. And finally, we will make the confusion matrix and get the final accuracy. So that's our structure, that's our NLP journey. So now, as soon as you're ready, let's start in the next tutorial with the simple data preprocessing phase. I can't wait to start. See you in the next tutorial, and until then, enjoy machine learning.